All right, welcome back to Practify, the podcast where we go inside the minds of private practice owners who've successfully scaled their practice and are open to sharing the strategies and mindset behind their growth. Today's guest is Allegra Gast, a registered dietitian and international board certified lactation consult who founded Aloha Nutrition, where she helps new moms regain energy, reduce brain fog, and feel confident breastfeeding. Allegra has turned her clinical expertise and her personal journey as a mom of four, including twins, into a global brand that now supports thousands of women through one-to-one consults, group coaching, and online resources. So without further ado, Allegra, welcome to Practify.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy and excited to be here.
Allegra, your journey obviously didn't start with all the Instagram followers and all the online programs. It began with a much earlier decision to combine two very different but complementary paths, dietetics and lactation. So I want to rewind all the way back. So Allegra, I guess first things first, when you first decided to study nutrition, what kind of drew you to dietetics as a career?
Yeah, I love food. I love food. I love knowing how it helps people, how it affects their health, how it might not affect their health depending on what they're eating. I grew up overseas most of my life, so food is very much cultural as well. And so I don't know, I've always been into health, and nutrition was just something that sparked my interest. I had no idea I wanted to work with women specifically, and especially postpartum moms. I thought I wanted to be more of a sports dietitian. I was working at a gym. I really was fascinated with how nutrition can influence your performance as an athlete. But it wasn't until my first job after I became a registered dietitian, I worked at WIC, which is Women, Infant, and Children. It's a federally run organization that gives food to low-income women, infants, and children. And so I was the dietitian where I would meet with moms and meet with their babies and their children and just kind of review their nutrition and their overall life, and kind of review how to optimize their health, especially with their young children who might be picky, or if they're navigating food issues around their pregnancy. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got into the nutrition realm. And then into lactation, it was still at WIC. I saw other lactation consultants helping these moms, and I was just very fascinated. I mean, I didn't have kids at the time, and I just thought breastfeeding was easy. You just put your baby to the breast and they nurse. But I started seeing all these challenges that moms were having, and I just was very passionate about helping them. And so I would sit in with the other lactation consultants and just kind of observe, and I was like, I want to do this too. Like, I want to help these moms and just empower them to feed their babies. And so I then became a lactation consultant, and then I worked at WIC for about 2 years, and then I left and started my private practice because I really wanted more one-on-one help. I wanted that to build a personal relationship with these clients, as opposed to WIC, you're really only with them for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then you don't see them again. And so I really wanted, as well as build my own schedule and, just kind of have that freedom of private practice. So, yeah.
When you became a mom yourself, how did your own postpartum experience shift the way you thought about supporting women?
Yeah, so I started off my career in my private practice working more for prenatal nutrition, helping moms with their pregnancy. But then it was after I had my first baby, I realized what a big gap there was in the postpartum period, and just like, wow, this is hard. This is hard for me to remember to eat, to focus on my nutrition when I'm caring for a newborn. And I felt like I had all that nutrition knowledge, but to put it into practice yourself, because I was a lactation consultant and dietitian for 2-3 years before I had my first baby. And so really just going through it myself and just realizing that there's a big gap, and especially with just support. We were a military family, and so I didn't have family support around me. And so really trying to figure it all out on my own, how to create meals, how to support my energy, especially when my baby was waking up a lot at night.
So For practitioners listening, what lesson can they take from your journey about turning personal experience into a powerful niche?
Mhm. I think don't be afraid to talk about your personal side. I think people really, in this age of AI and, finding things on Google and ChatGPT, like we kind of lose this personal connection with people, but that's what people want and that's what people need. And obviously, you don't have to share your whole life story with people, but I think giving them a little insight on just maybe how you're making meals or how you're protecting your mental health or, whatever your niche is, like give a little bit of insight on how you prioritize that and, how maybe even just like case studies of something you worked with a patient or a client. So I think just kind of being open about yourself as a person, building relatability, building trust. And even I feel like that's how I've been able to grow is like just building that know, like, trust aspect. So like you can know everything, but do they trust you? Do they know you? Can they relate to you? And obviously I don't relate to everyone I work with, but I think just being empathetic and just like, listening to their stories, being a good listener is super important. And, like you had said earlier, we learn all this clinical stuff in school, but it's really being out in the field where we're working with people one-on-one that we build these skills and just builds that personal relationship. And, I feel like because I went through this postpartum journey and even had some breastfeeding issues, I can relate more and just like, empathize with my clients a lot more. And like, I get what they're going through.
And on that note of skills, you've obviously built deep expertise in postpartum and lactation, two areas where many practitioners feel a little bit underprepared to handle, right? So what I want to do, Allegra, is I want to dig a little bit into the clinical side of your work and what practitioners often miss. So I guess first things first, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see out there about breastfeeding that even some health professionals still repeat?
Mhm. I think when you see challenges with breastfeeding, you think it's maybe more on the mom's end, or just some babies aren't able to breastfeed. When I'm really into that functional aspect, functional nutrition, and I even like to say I'm a functional lactation consultant, and that's asking the question, why? Well, why isn't this not working? And so, back many years ago, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, if babies weren't latching, you just give a bottle. But now we're asking, well, why is baby not latching? Why are they having a harder time at the breast? Why does mom get frequent clogged ducts or mastitis, which is inflammation of the breast? And so it's really digging deeper and asking why is this happening? And, so I think a big myth that I see is just people kind of ruling off breastfeeding issues as, oh, well, that just happens to some women or that just happens to some babies, when we still want to ask, no, there's a root cause to it. And, I think a big myth is, oh, breastfeeding is easy, when I always say I wouldn't have a job if it was easy. So clearly, it's not always so easy. Sometimes it's just, lack of knowledge. Moms just don't know how to sit with their baby. But sometimes it's as deep as like needing to work in baby's mouth. Maybe they have like a tongue tie or oral restriction that we need to work through. Maybe babies don't have a strong suck reflex. So doing like suck training. So, they call us the boob doctors. So, yeah.
Why do you think maternal health is so underserved, even though it's such a high need population? Like everyone needs help with it, you know?
Mhm. Good question. That's a question I think all of me and my friends, we always ask, like, why isn't there more research on women's health? And obviously, there's a big part of it is, if we're looking at nutrition and mom's maternal status and their nutrient stores, I mean, it's hard to ask a mom with a newborn to go to the doctor's office to do lab work. They're not going to want to go do that. And then finding even just scientists to go to people's houses to do lab work. Like it's a lot of the studies that we do have are small sample sizes. And then I think there's just like, I don't want to say there's not an interest, because I feel like there is, but there's just not enough funding for it. The research that we do have on breastfeeding is mostly from formula companies because they want to create their formula to help mimic breast milk, which, is great that formula has come a long way. But unfortunately, that's like the only research we really have is just funded by formula companies. And then, yeah, it's a good question. I don't know why there's not more research and more help. I feel like a lot of the symptoms, you go to your OB and they just kind of write you off, or like, oh, you're just anxious, or, they just kind of mask medications. They mask the symptoms with medications when a lot of times it's nutrient depletion. So pregnancy and then breastfeeding is very taxing on the body and depletes you of many minerals. And this is going to set you up for mental health issues, digestive issues, hormone imbalances, even just like insomnia, you're wired but tired. So, a lot of this comes down to just nutrient depletion. Yeah.
Now, from a clinical perspective, what makes supporting a postpartum woman fundamentally different from supporting like a general adult client?
Just our hormones are out the roof, during pregnancy, our estrogen progesterone rises and it just plummets after you have the baby. And so they say this is like the biggest hormonal change in a person's entire life. And so this alone is a huge contributor to how we're different than, your regular day-to-day woman who's not pregnant, not breastfeeding, not postpartum, and then of course men. So our demands are different. Also, our brain actually rewires. Our babies take our omega-3s to help with their brain development. And so there's a shift in our brain development. And so that's where like really supporting your nutrition is important, making sure you're getting enough of those omega-3 fatty acids. And then just like you're not sleeping enough. Everything is different from just your regular person. And that's why I'm not a fan of this bounce back culture where we're expecting moms to just bounce back to their old ways and, bounce back to their old bodies. Like, no, this first 6 months after you have a baby to even a year, it's all about nutrient repletion because your body has just gone through so much. Just your uterus to grow a baby goes from the size of a watermelon to back to a size of a peach. So, you've got, and then once you deliver the placenta, you have a plate-sized wound inside of your body. So, that's a lot. But it's a beautiful thing. Carrying a baby, having babies, it's a beautiful thing. Even if it is a lot on your body.
How much can nutrition actually influence lactation outcomes, and where does it not really make as big of a difference as people think?
So your body will still make breast milk. However, the concentration of nutrients is influenced by mom's diet. And we used to think, you can eat whatever you want. And yes, your breast milk is still wonderful and perfectly designed for your baby, but you can enhance the quality and the concentration of different nutrients, specifically iodine, B vitamins, choline, selenium even, and vitamin K. There are different minerals and vitamins that are influenced by your diet. And, this has been normalized with even cow's milk. If you have conventional cow's milk and grass-fed cow's milk, we know grass-fed is a little more nutrient dense than conventional. Same with eggs. If you're buying cage-free or, caged eggs versus pasture raised eggs, those are going to be a little healthier than, the caged eggs. So, same with our diet. Our diet does have a huge influence on the concentration of our breast milk, the nutrients. However, I don't like to always say that because breastfeeding in itself is already stressful. And I just want moms to make sure they're eating. But, I also don't want to sugarcoat things and say it doesn't matter, because it does matter. And then even if you're getting recurrent clogged ducts or mastitis or even experiencing low milk supplies, sometimes it is related to how many calories you're eating, the types of fat you're eating. If you're eating more inflammatory foods, that that can cause inflammation in the body, which you're more susceptible to clogged ducts and mastitis. So definitely it has a big impact, which makes the postpartum period so hard because you're trying to care for a baby while also prioritizing your health. And so I really teach my clients kitchen hacks, maybe do some canned beans here and there, or frozen vegetables because it's wash cut. You just pop it in the pan or pop it in the microwave. It's ready to go. Like frozen edamame is a great snack. Relying on, we live in a first world country, so we have a lot of convenience foods. I try not to demonize any foods, but really encouraging parents focus on protein, fiber, healthy fat, with a big emphasis on that protein. But yeah, to answer your question, it does. And then where it does not, I would say it, possibly how many, what you're eating, you'll still be able to make breast milk for many. And then there are some nutrients like iron and calcium that do not change in your breast milk based off of your diet, but a lot of them do.
How do you measure any energy depletion in moms? Because it's not really binary. It's not like you energy depleted or you're not. Like I feel like energy depletion can appear in many different ways for different mothers. So how do you kind of measure, or what frameworks or approaches do you kind of take on to actually evaluate if they have any energy depletion problems?
The biggest thing is energy. So brain fog, low energy, low, just even like mental health oftentimes can be you're hangry. So sometimes we see this as rage, but you're just so hungry. And so once you start eating more, especially eating breakfast, I mean, I know this was going to be a long podcast, so I've got snacks with me. I've got beef jerky, granola bar, trail mix, like food is fuel. And so especially taking care of a baby and taking care of a household, and then on lack of sleep, if you're not eating enough, you're going to have brain fog. You're going to have low energy. You're going to have that energy slump. I'm also a huge fan of electrolytes and mineral mocktails, which I have right here. So minerals, calories, sodium, potassium, magnesium, like these, I like to say, are your spark plugs. So you have thousands of different bodily functions, and you need these minerals and calories and protein to help your body function optimally. And so, we're kind of at this perfect storm with our hormones changing. We're producing breast milk, which, fun fact, your brain uses about 25% of your calories for energy, for brain function, whereas breastfeeding requires 30%. So you use up more energy producing breast milk than you use for your brain. So it's very demanding on the body. So definitely need to make sure you're eating enough and just providing those calories, that fuel to help you function. So yeah, I would say like brain fog and energy are the biggest ones, and mom rage and just patience.
How has specializing in this field given you authority and opened up opportunities that a generalist path would never ever have?
Yeah, I think really sharing my story. I mean, like here my twins, they're 1.5 years old right now, but there's still a lot of work. And so just me showing that, I am practicing what I preach, or I try to. And then when people themselves also put in the work, they notice improvements. And then I will share those stories and tell other people so that they see like, okay, wow, this isn't just working for her, for me, this is working for other people that she's helping. And so testimonials, I think, are the biggest, influencer for other people to see that it's working, or that what I'm saying holds true. So, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but, trying to provide the science, the research, and then also my personal skills as well as my clients' testimonials. I think all of that has given me that authority, like, okay, she's not just making up stuff, like this clearly is working. And then I do try to create content around research. Obviously, research is limited, and sometimes I have to share animal studies, and I will say, this is an animal study, this is what they found. Obviously we're not cows, like we have more research on cows' lactation and their nutrition than we do humans, but we can learn a lot about animal studies, so, trying to bring in the research that there is, and then my own stories, and then my clients, I think, have the biggest, support in me becoming the authority, I guess you could say.
For practitioners curious about this area, what's the most practical first step they can take to start building confidence in postpartum and lactation care?
I think getting out there and meeting other moms, even if you don't have kids, surround yourself around women, surround yourself around moms, listen to their stories. If you want to go to like breastfeeding support groups, if you want to go to like the WIC office and just ask to shadow, sometimes they'll let you. So I think just surrounding yourself. I mean, thankfully now there's a lot of like play groups, and even like the playgrounds and libraries are doing like toddler time. And so I think just getting out there and talking to other moms, even sharing your own journey and just making connections. I think a big issue I see with postpartum is just this isolation. We are a new person, we have this new identity as a mom. And so just connecting with other moms that go through it. And I think that's been one of the nice things about social media is you do find like-minded people, but, try to get in person with other people too. I think is going to be my biggest advice is like, just get out there, and you don't know what you don't know either. So like, I didn't know a lot of the stuff about postpartum nutrition until I got through it, until I started talking to other families and learning more about it. And so every day, I think just talk to families, listen to podcasts, listen to, other accounts out there. And then at the end of the day, you kind of make your own opinions. Cause like I said, there's a lot of misinformation out there too, and a lot of crazy ideas. So, try to filter things out.
Allegra, before we get into the business side of things, I just want to shift gears real quick and play a quick game of this or that. Essentially, it's super simple, super straightforward. I'll throw out two options and you just pick the one that feels most like you. All right?
All right.
Breastfeeding consults or postpartum nutrition coaching?
I think breastfeeding consults. And the reason is because you see instant success right away, whereas nutrition often can take several weeks to notice improvements.
Free energy guide or Instagram post as a lead magnet?
Free energy guide was my lead magnet.
Moms booking through insurance or moms paying cash for coaching?
I think insurance, just because you can get more visits with them, as opposed to cash pay is usually a one and done.
Instagram growth or email list growth?
Email list growth.
Creating digital programs or running live group coaching?
I love the live group coaching. There's just something with that connection, talking to people.
Client breakthroughs or viral posts?
Client breakthroughs.
Serving local clients in person or global clients online?
Global, worldwide. Just so much easier with my schedule.
Building programs for moms or building content for practitioners?
Building content for moms.
Predictable schedule or total flexibility with family life?
I would love a predictable schedule, but oftentimes that's not reality with young kids, especially if they get sick or they're not napping. So you learn to have a flexible schedule, but I would prefer reliable.
And then our final one, 4 kids at home or no team members?
4 kids at home.
All right. So, Allegra, you obviously didn't stop at consults. You built a system that moves moms from free resources into coaching and other offers. So, I want to touch on how you design those offers and funnels to actually work for, you could say, a time poor, overwhelmed audience, right? So, what was the very first offer you launched under Aloha Nutrition and how did it go?
Yeah, the first thing I launched was just a freebie, a free guide. I think it was like a 5-day meal plan. So, kind of just trying to get emails. So I had it that way where I was collecting emails. Um, and then I think the second thing was a course. So I created a course for postpartum moms. It was called Beyond Birth. Well, first it was called the postpartum approach, but then I changed that name to Beyond Birth because it encompassed more just overall like past babies. And so, yeah, the first time I launched that, it was kind of a flop. That's when I just got one offer. But I learned that you really have to have like a pre-launch. You have to talk about it. You have to show them like behind the scenes on it and really hype them up, send more emails. And so the second time I did that, I even had a free master class, which is where I gave some content. And then at the end of the free webinar, I offered the course. And that did a lot better. And now I just have it as a passive course on my website.
How do you
And then I
move
guess after
someone?
that, mhm.
Go for it.
I was going to say, and I then did group coaching because I felt like I was saying the same thing over and over again to each client. And I was like, I could see so many more people and we talk about the same things with the live group coaching program. So I did live coaching, but then I kind of put that on the back burner after I got pregnant with my twins, just because they were a lot and I just needed to like take things off my plate. So my goal for 2026 is to bring back those group coaching programs.
How do you move someone from downloading your free guide or resource into a consult or program?
Really talking to their pain points and painting the picture. I know what it's like to feel tired, yada, 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 kind of talk about their pain points and then show them what life could look like. You want to feel energized. You want to wake up ready to tackle the day and go to the park and play with your kids, so really kind of painting the picture and showing them the what and the why without telling them the how. So the how to improve that, that's where they get that information with your one-on-one coaching. So, after they get my free download, I kind of give them some tips, a little bit of the how, but not the full picture to really give them that individualized support. And, they do get wins with my freebies. I now have a mineral guide. So my clients do see improvements after they implement minerals and like mineral drinks. But if they no longer are feeling improvements, usually it's something deeper. And so I kind of talk a little bit about how this can help, but you're still experiencing brain fog or you're still, having digestive issues. Let's dive deeper and see what else is going on. And then that's usually when I can upsell them to the one-on-one.
How do you decide whether a client is better served with a one-to-one consult, group coaching, or even a program? How do you kind of identify which fits them best?
Mhm. I usually will have several emails or DM conversations or even a live call, a phone call or Zoom call where I really just listen to what kind of help they need. If they really just need general nutrition support, like they just don't know what they don't know, they just kind of need to know a general template type of thing, then I will encourage them to either enroll in my course or if I had my group coaching, I would have them do the group coaching. But if they feel like they're very unique, they have a unique situation, or they want lab testing. So we do specialty lab testing in my practice. So if we need more like one-on-one customization, like they know the foundations, we just need to tweak things for them specifically, then I'll encourage them to book the one-on-one. So it kind of like through talking and finding out what they need, that's when I have my different offerings.
Do you focus on retention?
Yes, I try to. It can be hard with breastfeeding because sometimes it's just like, they need help with the latch and then things improve and then that's it. So with a lot of my breastfeeding clients, it is kind of, you have to start from scratch. You have to keep getting more clients, because, we help them and then that's it. Maybe the second time they come around is when they have another baby. So it's harder to have retention with them. But for my nutrition clients, I feel like they do work with us for several months and then they might come back or they want to retest something. So I feel like it's easier for them. I do try to upsell in my lactation consults to work with us one-on-one for nutrition. So, when they're coming to us for a lactation consult, they're just focused on breastfeeding. They're not thinking about their digestive issues or their brain fog. Like they just want to breastfeed and they need help with that. But I do say, when you're in a good place, when you want to reach out, like we're here for you. And usually I can get people to upsell and work one-on-one for nutrition. So I guess in that aspect, there is some retention, but if you're just doing lactation, it's kind of a one and done type of consult.
What challenges have you faced designing programs for moms who are sleep deprived and short on energy? It's like they're tired as it is, and now they got to go and do this program. So how do you kind of design it in a way that aligns with their feelings and their situation around energy?
Mhm. It's hard. And I think that's like I did a 10-day energy challenge. And so I had them do the energy challenge where they would pick just one to two things that they would focus on, like eating breakfast, drinking more water, getting sunlight, getting movement. So like starting with just like 1 to 2 habits that they can implement. And then at the end of the 10 days, I encouraged them to do the course. So at least they had like a little bit of energy. But yeah, I mean, it's been kind of difficult to sell courses. I feel like actually people are moving away from courses. I feel like they're kind of being overwhelmed with just like all the courses that are out there. And I mean, even myself, I've bought courses and I haven't gone through them yet, or I'll do like one module, one lesson, and then I get busy or I forget, or I'm like, I don't really need this anymore. So I think it has been a little more challenging to sell my courses. I mean, I've definitely have, but I do a lot better with my group coaching or my live, like my 10-day energy challenge or my one-on-ones. So my dream would still be to really push that passive income and to sell the courses. But I feel like, I don't know if you've seen it too, but I feel like people are kind of moving away from courses. I don't know if you
It's
see
just so
that.
saturated. It's like every second person you speak to is trying to sell some sort of course. So it obviously makes sense that when people are experience things in abundance, they tend to move away from it. So I completely align, and I don't even think it's just this niche. I think it's in any niche you step into, whether it's agency work, the healthcare space, the wellness, like there's literally courses for anything and everything. I mean, I'm sure there's like on the most basic things. So I completely agree with you. I think it's so saturated, and people are they definitely do prefer that live support as opposed to that pre-created content and resources. Um, but yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. And I guess, Allegra, my next question is, I want to ask you, earlier I asked you a question around insurance or cash-based, and you said insurance. And my question to you is, how do you balance insurance-based consults, but then with also the higher ticket coaching offers?
Yeah, so I'm actually not in network for nutrition with insurance, but I am for lactation. So with breastfeeding, I kind of mentioned it's usually a one and done type of consult. But when I take insurance, they usually have like 6 visits. So I right off the bat say, okay, let's schedule your follow up. Let's go ahead and, in 2 weeks, let's see how things are going. Or you start weaning your baby or introducing solid foods, like because they know that insurance will cover it, they're more likely to book those sessions as opposed to if they were paying out of pocket, they would be like, things are going really well. I don't need to make this consult, or I can just chat GPT how to introduce solid foods to my baby. So I feel like with the insurance for lactation, it's been like better for that retention as opposed to nutrition. I don't feel like I have to take insurance for that because people will pay for that full package. I mean, they definitely would prefer insurance cover it. And I've kind of been playing around with whether I want to do that or not. But unfortunately, insurance, at least here in America, is not for preventative medicine. It's really once you have a illness, a disease state. So a lot of my clients don't necessarily have that disease state, like hypothyroidism or diabetes, but they have all these symptoms. And so I think because they have all these symptoms, they're more likely to pay out of pocket, especially since we can do lab reviews and we work with them for 4 to 6 months. So that's like our high ticket. And so people are willing to invest in that, invest in their health without taking insurance. And I do give them a super bill, which is a medical receipt. So if they do want to submit for reimbursement, then they can, but I'm not running insurance.
For practitioners listening, what's the simplest funnel they could build if they were to start in a similar niche tomorrow? Just super high level.
Yeah, I think having like a freebie first and building trust. So even in your freebie, introduce yourself. What do you do? Share some testimonials, share some case studies. I mean, people are opening the freebie because you're giving them free information. So trying to really talk about you as the authority, what you do, a little bit snippet of your life. And then you're getting these email addresses and then having a email sequence after that. So you give them the freebie right away, and then maybe a day later you send another email and then another email. And I don't know if you've read the book Story Brand, I think is what it's called, by Donald Miller, or Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And he's all about, like, when you ask someone to marry you, you don't meet them right away and ask them to marry you. You date them, you get engaged, you court them. Like, you're building this relationship with them before you ask them to marry you. So before you give your offer to work one-on-one, kind of nurture them, talk about their pain points, talk about, what you do, share some testimonials, and then, you have your ask, so that then they're like, you're not a cold lead. You've warmed them up a little bit. So yeah, have a freebie and then have that email sequence.
And Allegra, on that note of leads, you've obviously built an audience of nearly 100,000 followers on Instagram, which is no small feat, especially the fact that you've managed to do all of this while raising 4 kids. So I want to talk about how social media became such a powerful driver for you and your business. So first things first, when did you first start creating content seriously? And what was the original goal with Instagram?
So I first started like in 2018, before I had my baby, just kind of like randomly posting some content. And then 2019, I had my first baby and I started posting a little bit more. And then it was after I had my second baby, I had some reel go viral, like over, I feel like there was a glitch actually in Instagram, because it was like, one of those lazy reels that you create that you're like, nobody's going to like this, but you do it. And then
It's always
somehow it
those
just
ones.
yeah. And so like overnight, I want to say I got 20,000 followers just from this random reel. So
Sure.
it was like totally luck that got me up to like 20,000. And then it kind of gave me that momentum, like, okay, I can do this. And then different brands reached out and wanted to collaborate. I was doing a lot of like Instagram lives with other practitioners in my like field. So like birth workers, doulas, midwives, chiropractors, pelvic floor therapists. So doing a lot of like Instagram takeovers, Instagram lives, doing like collaborative posts. So that really helped, because their audience and my audience we were both getting exposure. And then I think just COVID really helped. People weren't able to meet one-on-one. And so they really went to social media to get their content, to get information. And so I started posting a lot of just valuable information, educational stuff, especially around breastfeeding and nutrition. And then, friends started sharing posts to their stories, and then that would get other people to follow. But then the big thing also that kind of tipped me over, helped me get a bunch of leads, was when I announced I was pregnant with twins. Then, I kind of shared my twin pregnancy journey. And then every week, like once I was 33 weeks pregnant with the twins, I would do weekly updates, and more people started following me because they're like, when is she due? When is she due? When is she
Yeah.
gonna deliver? And even my Instagram story views like skyrocketed because everyone's like, when is she gonna deliver the babies? And I went to 39 weeks and 4 days. And so there was kind of like this, like it kind of felt like a TV show, you're just like, what's the hook? You kind of are waiting around. And so I think that really helped me grow. And then just showing the raw behind the scenes of raising young kids. We had 4 kids, 5 and under. And so just kind of like sharing a lot of that. I mean, I always say don't compare your beginning with someone's middle or end. So like this has been years of me posting on Instagram, being consistent, it's like a job for me. It's a full-time job, being in my DMs, I run it. I don't pay for a social media, person. So I run it completely. I answer all my DMs. I just kind of feel like it's like what I enjoy. But if you're just starting off, don't compare where you're at to like I said, I've been doing this for like 6 years now. So it's not like this happened overnight. So be consistent, but yeah, it's work.
Was there a specific point where you realized your posts were actually converting into paying clients? Because it's one thing getting views and attention, but it's another converting that attention into actual commitment.
Yeah. So, like, I have call to actions like comment support if this resonates with you, or, comment energy if you feel like you're needing more energy. And I can actually track it through ManyChats, which is an app or website. I'm sure you've heard of it. But I can see like my conversion, how many people clicked, and then kind of just keeping tabs of my email list, seeing how that's growing, keeping tabs of my Instagram following or just my engagement. So I've found that a lot of my breastfeeding content and then my personal stories do really well. So I kind of try to incorporate more of that. Um, but yeah, just kind of like knowing your numbers are really important, really helpful. Just kind of keeping track. Okay. How is my email list growing? How is my email sequence? At what point are people purchasing my products or, booking my discovery calls? Is it after the third email I send out or the fourth email, or, just kind of see where you're converting people and then keep doing that.
You've obviously shared so much of your journey, right? But I guess there's some things you probably don't share. So how do you decide what to share from your personal journey versus like keeping things professional?
Mhm. Yeah, good question. I feel like sometimes especially now, like as you grow, some people expect you to talk about certain things or talk about world events. And, I know there's a lot of division in the world. And so that's kind of been hard to navigate, like how much do I want to share about where I stand on certain things? And then, do I just kind of keep it mom life and just breastfeeding and nutrition related? So that's kind of been the challenging thing that I'm facing now, is how much do I want to share about my opinions? Because I know it, like, everyone believes something different. And, so that's kind of been one challenge that I'm facing now. And, sometimes if I talk about something or I don't talk about something, I get unfollowers. So it's like you can't win. So either you don't talk about something, people unfollow because you're not passionate about that, but then you do mention something else and they unfollow because they disagree with that. So, it's a tricky situation. So right now I've just been kind of focusing, staying in my lane, staying in my niche, talking about, home life, raising kids, nutrition, what I'm doing, and sharing case studies and testimonials from clients, because that's why they follow me. They're not following me because of a certain political point of view. Like, they're following me for nutrition and breastfeeding information. So I try to remind myself, like, they started following me for my content. So just keep pushing my content out.
Do you follow a content system or batching process, or is it more like unplanned and intuitive?
I wish I should be more organized than I am, but it really is like instinctual, like what kind of mood I'm feeling. So I have a lot of like content ideas in my notes tab. If something comes up, I'm like, oh, I should do a post on that. But I do try to batch create my content and then kind of schedule out my posts. But sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like sharing that today, or I didn't realize today was National Pumping Day or whatever. Let me do that instead. So I wish I had a better system, but I feel like I'm kind of just on a whim. I like spontaneity. Sometimes it's not good for me though, because I do get so busy and then I'm like, shoot, I haven't posted anything in like 4 days. So yeah, I'm trying to get better about that.
Would you say practitioners need a big following like yours to get clients?
No, I think just really resonate and talk to them. I mean, I was still seeing clients when I had like, a couple hundred, maybe 5,000. I mean, I've been able to hire contractors because I have grown, but when I was just alone, like probably had like 500 or less followers when I had my first clients. So, I don't think you have to have a big following. And then even I don't think social media, Instagram has to be your lead magnet either. I think just writing blog posts, getting on Google, building that SEO, that search engine optimization. I think there are other ways to monetize and to get clients besides social media. I don't like writing blog posts, so I probably should, but that hasn't been my passion, like building blogs and building my website. Like I really enjoy Instagram. So that's kind of where I have found people. You also want to find people where they're at. So if you if you work in a niche where people are actually Googling, then maybe you want to build more blog posts and, really work on your website. And obviously I paid for a designer. I, put in a lot of money into my website, but a lot of my clients are coming from Instagram. But I don't think you have to have Instagram to get clients.
You touched on something just now that I just want to quickly loop back to, and you said that you're kind of hesitant sometimes about sharing stuff about your opinion, right? And obviously that's because people unfollow, people disagree, and that's perfectly fine because everyone is entitled to their own opinion. But how do you handle pushback or criticism online while protecting your credibility? Because I'm sure you get negative comments.
Yes, and that's been the downside of growing. I sometimes wish I still had my 500 followers because, it's nice and small. And, as you grow, you get people that forget that you're a human. I'm still a mom. I've got feelings too. And, people can be really ruthless, and I've had to grow thick skin. I think just being in it for a while, I just have to ignore and move on because it used to really affect me, and then it would affect how I was showing up for my family. And I'm like, I need to protect my peace instead of like dwelling on this message, just delete and move on. Because yeah, I've gotten comments, or even if I like share a breastfeeding post, someone will say, oh my gosh, you're formula shaming. And I'm like, where did you get this from? No, like I just created a breastfeeding post doesn't mean that I'm anti-formula. Like formula is there for a reason, for sure. So, I've just had to kind of grow thick skin and not let it get to me. If we take everything to heart, then we're going to constantly spiral, and that's not healthy for us. So I think also, if there's a lot of stuff going on and I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm being fed a lot of things from my Instagram followers or who I'm following, I have to just turn it off for the day and say, I need to protect my peace. This is impacting how I'm showing up to my husband and to my kids, and I don't want that. They don't deserve that. So yeah, it's kind of just been like learning over the years and growing thick skin and trying to just brush it off, brush it off and move on. I know it's easier said than done though, but yeah.
Allegra, before we wrap up, I'd love for you to share what you're currently working on and how listeners can actually connect with you. So, what are the main services and programs that you currently offer through Aloha Nutrition?
So right now I have my courses, and then I do twice a year a big launch. I just like the live launches. I mean, they can get overwhelming, so that's why I only do it twice a year. And so I'm gearing up for a hair tissue mineral test launch. So a hair tissue mineral test is a type of specialty lab testing that looks at your minerals. So sometimes your blood work might look normal, but it's your tissue that also holds a lot of these minerals. And so a hair tissue mineral test is a great way to do that. So I open it up every Mother's Day in May, and then I do it Black Friday in November. So I'm getting ready to launch that in November. And so that's what I'm working on now. So I'm in that pre-launch stage. So really nurturing them, talking to my audience about the importance of minerals, why they need them, how a hair test can be really impactful, and then sharing testimonials. And then come November, that's when I'll open the doors. So that's what I'm working on. And then we are constantly taking one-on-one clients. So I have 4 practitioners that work with me. We're dietitians and lactation consultants. And so that's been really helpful, especially if I need to take time off because, we're traveling or kids are being difficult or, we're in that busy stage. So it's been helpful to have a team. And then just, like I said earlier, being an entrepreneur can feel lonely. And so it's been fun building a team where we have monthly team meetings and can connect and collaborate. So that's been great.
What would you say is the transformation that you're aiming to create for the moms who come into your world?
Just that they should enjoy this postpartum season. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom once you become a mom, but it can be a beautiful time. So really I want the transformation for them to feel good and to enjoy it. This time is short. It's really fast. And I always say that hard does not mean bad. We're going to have hard days. There's a lot of things we do in life, like just getting a degree is hard, but it doesn't mean it's bad. And so just I'd love for moms to know that, you're doing a great job. It's a hard season, but it's a blessing. And, remember yourself, focus on your health, and focus on filling your cup up so that you can fill your kids up. And so, yeah, I think just the importance of taking care of themselves and loving the season of life.
Where's the best place for people to find you and follow your work?
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram and TikTok as well. You can follow me at aloha.nutrition. So I started my business when I lived in Hawaii. And then my website is aloha-nutrition.com.
There we go. Allegra, I've got one final quick game for you called Complete the Sentence. I'll start a sentence and you finish it with the first thing that comes to mind. Does that sound good?
Okay.
All right. The best piece of advice I ever received was?
Let's see. I feel like my mind just went let's see. I guess, the season is short, but, enjoy it. Let's see. I got to come back to this.
One thing I wish I knew earlier in my career is?
I think that, it's not instant gratification. It does take work and it takes time. So, and if it's bad, it doesn't mean, or if it's hard, it doesn't mean it's bad.
The part of my work that lights me up the most is?
Getting DMs from clients and just seeing that what I said worked, and or even breastfeeding, they're still breastfeeding, or I talk sometimes about clogged ducts and they message me and say I was able to treat it how you recommended. I didn't have to go on antibiotics for the mastitis. So those DMs are, can either wreck me for the day if they're a mean one, but a lot of times they're so uplifting and I'm like, okay, this is helping people. It's very rewarding.
And then finally, success to me means?
Enjoying your life. Like, I think sometimes we get so caught up on money, but, how are you enjoying your life overall and your peace? And, you can have all the money in the world, but are you actually happy? And are you helping people and, kind of seeing what values you have in your life? Like me, I really prioritize family, and I love being in private practice because I can take my kids to school in the morning. I'm home to do pickups. I plan my schedule around them, and even my husband, we're able to spend more time together because of my flexible schedule. So I think that's been the best success, is knowing like, okay, I can financially, bring some money, but I'm able to have more time with the family, which is what I love.
Allegra, thank you for sharing your journey and giving us a look at what it really takes to build a global niche focused practice. For practitioners listening, her story shows the power of choosing a high need specialty, designing offers that actually work for your clients, and using social media to reach far beyond your local area. So, Allegra, it's been a pleasure speaking to you and having you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. And to all those listening, we'll share Allegra's details in the show notes below. And without further ado, we'll see you in the next one.